I fucking love video games. All kinds of video games, shooty games, jumpy games, walkie games. To me, they are the crossroads of art and science, of art and technology. It is the only form of art that has a form of interactivity to it. And as a result, they are capable of teaching extremely valuable lessons about exploration and travel.
Here's what I mean. You remember that 1979 horror film Alien, where you got all these characters on board this ship with this killer alien, and it's intense because this alien is killing everybody off one by one, and you're just on the edge of your seat hoping any of them can just get away alive?
Dallas?
Well, that movie has a video game follow-up called Alien Isolation, which, in my opinion, makes a better sequel to the movie than Aliens did. There's a DLC for the game called Crew Expendable, which takes scenes from the movie and recreates them whole in the game itself.
Because of its interactivity, you're not watching other people try and survive on this ship. It's on you, the player, to survive on that ship. You can't hurt the alien. At best, you can scare it off with a flamethrower, so you spend most of your time sneaking around avoiding the alien, crawling through vents and hiding in lockers, which is not exactly what the movie shows. Rather than a whole lot of heart-pounding action, in the game you get an uncompressed version of the alien experience, because translation into a game requires it to translate mundane moments as well. When the game came out, a lot of critics criticized it for that reason, saying that the game played too slow and that it wasn't packed with thrill, probably because they were expecting it to be more like the movie. But that's the point of the game. The Alien film is a sort of highlight reel of events, while the game contains all the parts in between those highlights. Makes the player feel like the prey, and that is the strength of video games as an art. Because games are the only platform that can express this and show that the step-by-step journey is the majority of the experience, that travel and exploration aren't just simply about going from point A to point B, but are about actively being present and engaged in those spaces in between. They enable diversions to become priorities and encourage you to poke around into every little corner and really experience a place. Had I not grown up with adventure games like Zelda, I would probably never have left to adventure in real life. I'm in Seattle right now, obviously, at a sort of midpoint for my trip. Seattle was the only place I wanted to be with an actual time frame attached to it, coming for PAX West. Everywhere else I've been traveling to and from freely and on my own time. I originally left Colorado by driving over the Rocky Mountains and eventually made my way to Las Vegas. And I had enough gas money to get to Vegas, and once I got there, I knew I'd be able to drive for Postmates, but I hadn't thought about that small space in between. That is, having enough gas money to actually drive for Postmates once I got there. So I was in a shitty situation. I wasn't very far into my adventure, and I already had to shift into problem-solving mode. I made some cardboard signs and stood at the exit of a Walmart I was parked in. It was an uncomfortable situation, to say the least, but asking for help was my only real option at that point. Eventually, after getting money for gas and a shower, I was able to climb out of that hole and proceed to Los Angeles. And fuck California, by the way, especially LA. You see all these rich people driving fancy cars around, but like, can you even enjoy owning a fancy car in a place like this? The traffic is a total shit show, which you hear always, but what you don't hear is that the parking situation is also a total shit show. It's mostly street parking everywhere. People have to park on the street for their own house. And where there are parking lots, they're packed row to row. One of the things that I absolutely cannot stand is when somebody looking for parking sees somebody getting in their car and eventually is going to pull out. So they just sit there, turn their turn signal on, and wait to take the parking spot. But in California, that's all you can do. You have to do that. If you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So pretty much every spot is only ever open for like 10 seconds, even in like huge parking garages. So yeah, I was happy to get out of there and proceed north to Portland. I saw a cool eclipse, and then was able to make it to Seattle just in time for PAX, or the Penny Arcade Expo. I love PAX. This is my second year there. You take some 100,000 or so gamers and shove them all into the Seattle Convention Center. And then game developers show up and demo all their stuff. I got to play the new Assassin's Creed, Cuphead, Sea of Thieves. Kittens were there, which were really cute. I don't think they were worth waiting in line for 90 minutes, but whatever. Got to play some virtual reality stuff too, really into that VR. Got to play Blaster Man or something, and it was a lot of fun. Probably the most fun I've had in VR so far, actually. I was real bummed when the demo ended, so I got back in line immediately to play it. But before I got to play it a second time, I found something even more interesting, which was these people took a fidget spinner and gave it Bluetooth connectivity and threw accelerometers into the ends of it so that the computer would record the input of the fidget spinner being spun, and then they could apply that to be a control for a video game. So I played some version of Flappy Bird where you spin the spinner and the bird goes up and you have to bounce it through the pipes, which was very, very interesting. Let's see, what else is there to talk about? Food. So, yeah, when you're traveling without a kitchen, you usually eat out, fast food or other restaurants. But when you're traveling for a long time, you can't exactly eat fast food constantly. I am eating a lot of fast food, especially Panda Express, but that is not the most fiscally responsible choice and certainly not the healthiest. I have a portable Coleman stove in my car, and I don't have access to refrigeration, so what I can cook is pretty limited. I can only really work with dry foods, and of course, it has to be very cheap. So I ended up finding this YouTube channel where this old lady from the Great Depression actually shares all the recipes that she used to eat and make during that time. She's dead now, but her recipes still live on, and I made a couple of them. First dish I made was something called the poor man's meal, which was a fitting name. Pretty simple stuff. You take some potato and onion, throw it into a skillet with oil. I guess the cheapest meat they could get back in those days was hot dogs, so you chop some of those up and throw that in as well. Wait for it to cook and be finished. It was quite bland. Didn't they have spices back in the Great Depression? Oh.
And I had to quit high school because couldn't afford socks, couldn't afford anything to wear.
So yeah, it turns out if you can't afford socks, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of garlic powder on hand. I brought along a whole box of spices, on the other hand. I was able to make it work. It came out quite well, actually. The more I watched her videos and recipes, the more clear it became that most of what they ate was small variations of the same base ingredients like potatoes and pasta. So the next thing I made was a dish called pasta and peas, and you will never guess what was in it. Yes, I took the same potatoes and onions from the previous recipe and then added pasta and peas to it. I seasoned it at my own discretion this time. It turned out quite well. It's not as photogenic as the first one, but it was definitely the superior dish. I'm sure I'll be making more of her recipes in the future. For now, I am in the Seattle area, working Postmates deliveries, hustling pretty hard so I can buy some shit that I need. Eventually, I will head east through Idaho and Montana before going south back home to Colorado for Christmas. That means I'll have been gone for 6 months. Quite an exhausting 6 months, actually. I really want to sleep in my own bed again. I'm hoping to make 2 more videos before I get home. So, until then.